You've walked away from conversations feeling like you connected with someone, really connected, and then watched them pull back. No explanation, no shift you could point to. They just stopped letting you in, and you're standing there running replays. What did I say wrong? Was I too much? Not enough? Here's what nobody told you. It wasn't what you said, it was what you were doing while you said it. Most men walk into conversations trying to be impressive. They share the right things. They ask the right questions. They work for it. And the harder they work, the less trusted they become. Because trust doesn't respond to effort. It responds to something else entirely. Something most men have never been taught to use. There's a psychological mechanism. Researchers have studied it. Therapists use it. The most naturally magnetic people do it without knowing they're doing it. Called mirroring. Not the fake version. Not the surface-level body language trick you read about in a listicle. The real version. The one that operates below conscious awareness and triggers something in the human nervous system that says, "This person is safe." Once you understand how this actually works, not the concept, but the specific behavioral shifts that deploy it, you will never struggle to build trust again. In dating, in rooms, with anyone. But here's the part that's going to be uncomfortable. Most of the things you're currently doing, the things you think are building connection, are doing the opposite. They're signaling to her nervous system that you're a performance, and the nervous system doesn't trust performances. Subscribe right now, because in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what the mirror technique is, why it works at a level most people can't explain, and the 5 specific shifts that activate it, before you say a single word. By the end of this, you'll know what to do, not what to think about. What to do. Tonight, in the next conversation. There's a man. Let's call him Andrew Marshall. Andrew wasn't the guy who struggled in conversations. He was the opposite. Women described him as easy to be around. The kind of man who made you feel like the most interesting person in the room without trying to. He listened. Actually listened. Not the kind of listening where someone's waiting for their turn to talk, but the kind where he remembered the small things. The name of your sister. The job you mentioned hating. The city you grew up in and never went back to. He was warm without performing it and interested without manufacturing it. That part came naturally to him, and none of it was enough, because at a certain point in every dynamic, the point where something was supposed to shift from comfortable to something more, women would tap the brakes, not coldly, not with cruelty, just quietly, friendly but unavailable, open but not invested. And Andrew would be standing there trying to locate the moment things changed, unable to find it, because there was no moment. Just a slow recognition on her end that whatever this was, it wasn't going anywhere. He described it the same way every time. Like being on the outside of the glass. Like he could see in clearly, could read the room, could feel the connection, and still couldn't get through. He tried adjusting. More vulnerability. Less. More pursuit. More space. He read things, thought about things, changed his approach across a dozen different dynamics. Nothing moved the pattern, and after long enough, the pattern started moving him instead. He became hyper-aware in every interaction, monitoring his words before they came out, measuring her responses for signals, spending so much mental energy analyzing whether he was getting through that he stopped being actually present, which meant he stopped being the version of himself that had made women like him in the first place. The awareness meant to solve the problem was quietly creating it. Here's the part that took Andrew a long time to see. The problem was never his warmth. The problem was what he was doing with it. Most men, when they want someone to trust them, give. They offer themselves. They fill the space. With personality, with history, with humor, with effort. They share early and often. They make themselves available in every direction. They operate on a belief so deep they've never examined it, that trust is built by proving you're trustworthy. So they put everything on the table, fully, quickly, hoping that the sheer quantity of themselves is enough to crack something open in the other person. Andrew did this constantly. Every conversation was an offering. He showed up with himself turned all the way up, giving her every reason to let him in, wondering why the door stayed closed. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work isn't psychological. It's biological. The human nervous system doesn't make trust decisions based on information. It doesn't sit down and weigh the evidence. It doesn't think, he seems honest, he's shared a lot, I should let him in. The nervous system is older than that. Much older than language, older than social reasoning, older than the part of the brain that processes what someone is telling you. And it makes its assessments through a completely different channel. Not content, resonance. Not what someone reveals, how they make the body feel in the room. When you flood someone with yourself, even warmly, even with good intentions, you are asking their nervous system to absorb something foreign, quickly, without time to calibrate. And the nervous system, when something foreign arrives fast and in volume, doesn't open. It regulates. It holds the distance it needs to hold until it can determine whether the environment is safe. The fastest way to make a nervous system feel safe is not to give it more of you. It's to give it back to itself. That's the mirror technique. At its core, it's simple enough that most men dismiss it the first time they hear it. People trust what feels familiar, and nothing in the world feels more familiar to a person than their own reflection. Not their literal reflection, their felt experience of themselves, their rhythm, their pace, their way of moving through a thought. When someone else in the room begins to match that, not imitate it, not perform it, but genuinely attune to it, something in the nervous system registers a recognition it can't fully name. This person already understands me, not because you said anything, not because you demonstrated anything, because something in the interaction felt like looking at a version of yourself from the outside, and you don't build walls against yourself. You don't regulate distance from something that already feels like it belongs. Andrew Marshall had never once tried to do less. He'd been trying to do more his entire life. More warmth, more presence, more openness, more effort. Operating on the assumption that connection was a volume problem. That if he just gave enough, something would eventually open. The real problem wasn't that he wasn't giving enough. It was that he was giving in a direction that bypassed the only channel trust actually travels through. He wasn't reflecting her. He was presenting himself. And those two things feel completely different on the receiving end, even when the person receiving them can't explain why. That was the entire problem. And once he saw it, everything that came after was just learning to do the opposite of what had always felt like the right move. Most men think mirroring is about body language. Cross your arms when she crosses hers. Lean when she leans. Nod when she nods. It's the version that gets taught in charisma courses and self-improvement seminars, packaged as a shortcut to connection. And it fails every time for a reason nobody in those rooms explains clearly. Performed mirroring tells her you're watching, and being watched, consciously, strategically, by someone running a system on you, creates the exact opposite of safety. It creates the feeling of being studied, of being a subject in someone else's experiment. And nobody in the history of human connection has ever trusted a man who made them feel like a case study. The version that actually works is subtler. So subtle that most men walk past it in every conversation without registering it once. It doesn't live in the body. It lives underneath the body, in something most people have never thought to pay attention to because it's invisible, until you know what you're looking for. It lives in pace. Every person has a rhythm, not a mood, not a personality, a rhythm. The specific tempo at which they move through thoughts, whether they speak in long, unbroken sentences or in short bursts with space between them. Whether they process out loud, thinking as they talk, or whether they go quiet first and arrive at the sentence already formed. Whether their energy is front-loaded, high at the start of a conversation, settling as it goes, or whether it builds slowly and arrives somewhere deeper after 20 minutes. These patterns aren't random. They're the signature of a nervous system operating at its natural frequency, and that frequency is running constantly, underneath everything being said, whether anyone is paying attention to it or not. When someone else in the room matches that frequency, not imitates it, not performs it, but genuinely attunes to it, something happens in the brain at a level that never surfaces as a conscious thought. There's no moment where she thinks, he's moving at my pace. It doesn't announce itself. It just registers as a feeling, a quiet, specific, deeply familiar feeling. This person moves like I move, and that feeling, arriving before any content has been exchanged, before any connection has been named or declared, is the first signal the nervous system uses to decide whether it's safe to open. Not what you said, not how interesting you were, whether the room felt like yours. I used to do the opposite of this without knowing I was doing it. I came into conversations with energy already running, sharp, fast, forward-moving. I thought momentum was attractive, and sometimes it was. There's a version of high energy that reads as confidence and pulls people in. But what it also did, consistently, was pull the room to my frequency instead of finding hers, which meant she spent the first 20 minutes of every conversation slightly recalibrating, slightly adjusted, never fully settled. And a woman who is still recalibrating is not letting you in. She's too busy managing the internal distance between your pace and hers to do anything else. I thought the conversations were going well because they were moving. What I didn't understand is that I was the only thing making them move. She was just keeping up. Here's the shift. When you sit across from someone for the first time, before you say anything interesting, before you go anywhere real, slow down to her. Not dramatically. Not in a way she'd ever notice or name. Just let your pace find the tempo of hers. If she speaks slowly, you stop rushing. If she leaves space between her sentences, you stop filling it with the next thing. If she thinks before she answers, if she goes quiet for a second before the sentence arrives, you stop treating that pause like a problem to be solved with your next line. You let it breathe. Because she's not pausing because she's uncomfortable. She's pausing because that's how she thinks. And a man who can sit inside her pause without flinching is a man who already feels safe. Most guys don't realize this. Pace matching is the most powerful trust signal available in human communication. More powerful than what you say. More powerful than how good-looking you are, or how interesting your life is, or how well the conversation goes on paper. Because it doesn't operate on the level of content. It operates on the level of felt experience. And trust lives at the level of felt experience, not information. It costs you nothing except the performance of appearing impressive, which is the thing that was blocking you anyway. Andrew Marshall talked at people. That's the honest description of what he was doing, even when it looked like conversation. His energy was high, his pace was fast. He drove interactions forward like momentum was a virtue, and stillness was something to be avoided. Women liked being around him. They left conversations with him feeling energized, amused, genuinely glad they'd talked. And then they went home and didn't think about him. Because you don't carry someone with you after a conversation where you spent the whole time running to keep up with their pace. You just feel slightly out of breath and move on. When Andrew slowed, something changed that he didn't have language for at first. Not quieter, not less himself, not dimmed in any direction that would read as weakness or disinterest. Just calibrated, moving at the rhythm of the room instead of overriding it. And what he noticed, what every woman who talked to him after that shift noticed without being able to name, was a specific quality in how the conversation felt when it ended. Like something had settled. Like she'd been understood without having to explain herself. Like she could breathe in a way she couldn't quite before. That feeling, that wordless, specific, inexplicable sense of ease, is what trust feels like in its earliest form, before it has a name. Before either person has decided anything consciously. It starts with pace. It always has. Most men just never stopped moving long enough to find out. You've probably done this before. The conversation is going well, better than well. There's actual energy in it, something real moving underneath the words, and you can feel it. So you do what every man does when something feels like it's working. You keep it going. Another question, then a follow-up on the first, then another angle on the same topic, because she seemed engaged and you don't want the momentum to drop. You're running the engine because silence feels like losing, and questions feel like proof that you're interested, and interested feels like attractive. It doesn't work the way you think it does. Questions are information collection. That's what they are at the mechanical level, regardless of how warmly they're delivered. And being on the receiving end of a long sequence of them, even from someone you like, even in a conversation that feels warm on the surface, creates a specific discomfort that nobody ever names out loud, but everyone has felt. It's the feeling of being interviewed, of having your interior life pulled out of you and cataloged by someone who is receiving it but not quite meeting it. You're giving, they're collecting. And somewhere in the nervous system, that asymmetry registers as a subtle wrongness that poisons the whole dynamic without ever announcing itself clearly enough for anyone to point to. She can't tell you that's what's happening. She probably doesn't know. She just knows that by the end of the conversation she feels slightly exposed and she's not entirely sure why. The second shift in the mirror technique is called reflective response. It sounds simple when you first hear it, simple enough that most men dismiss it immediately, because the mind looks for complexity when it's trying to solve a hard problem, and this doesn't look like enough. But the reason it works is the same reason pace matching works. It operates below the level where conscious assessment happens. It lands in the body before the brain has time to evaluate it. Here's what it looks like in practice. She says something with real weight in it, something that isn't just surface content, something where you can feel the actual experience underneath the words, and instead of following it with a question, or pivoting to your own related story, or affirming it with something generic, you name what you heard underneath it. Not literally, not clinically. You're not her therapist, and she doesn't want to be analyzed. Something quieter than that, something that demonstrates you didn't just hear the sentence, you heard what the sentence was carrying. That sounds like it cost you something. That's not a small thing to carry. You didn't just walk away from that. You made a decision about yourself. Read those back slowly. Notice what they do. They don't ask for more information. They don't redirect to your experience. They don't evaluate or problem solve or try to make her feel better. They simply name the thing underneath the thing, the weight of it, the significance of it, the specific kind of experience it actually was, and hand it back to her without trying to do anything with it. And when that happens, when someone names the real thing, the thing beneath the surface version, the thing she maybe didn't even fully articulate to herself yet, the nervous system registers something it almost never gets to register in conversation with a man. This person can actually see me, not the version she presented, not the edited, socially appropriate account of what happened, the actual interior experience of it. And the moment someone believes they can be seen like that, really seen, not performed at, not managed, not collected, every wall that was holding quietly lowers. Not because she decided to trust you, because her body already did. Most guys don't realize this because everything they've been taught points in the opposite direction. Questions show interest. Interest builds connection. So more questions should build more connection. The logic is clean and it's completely wrong because it misunderstands what connection actually is. Connection isn't two people exchanging information about themselves. It's two people feeling met by each other. And questions, however thoughtful, are extraction. Reflective responses are something else entirely. They're proof of receipt. They show that what she gave you didn't just pass through, it landed. You held it. You understood what it actually was. And understanding what something actually was, without being asked to explain it, is one of the rarest experiences a person can have in conversation. The difference between being heard and being received is the difference between a conversation and a connection. Most men only ever get to heard. They never figure out why the connection never quite forms. Andrew Marshall was a gifted questioner. That was genuinely his skill. He could keep anyone talking, draw anyone out, find the thread in any story worth pulling and pull it carefully. Women loved talking to him. They'd leave his conversations having said more than they'd planned to, having gone places they hadn't expected to go, feeling the specific kind of warmth that comes from being genuinely listened to, and then they'd go home and feel slightly strange about it, like they'd given something to someone they didn't fully know yet, like the dynamic had been tilted in one direction the whole time, and they hadn't noticed until they were already outside. They'd told him everything. They felt like they barely knew him. And the exposure of that asymmetry, the quiet realization that they'd opened while he'd remained mostly intact, was enough to make the next interaction feel slightly guarded in a way neither of them could explain. When Andrew stopped filling space with questions and started filling it with reflection, the dynamic reversed. He stopped extracting and started returning. He gave things back, named what he heard, sat inside what she said long enough to actually meet it before moving on. Women stopped walking away from conversations with him feeling like they'd been interviewed by someone warm. They walked away feeling like they'd been met by someone real. That's the whole shift, and it's smaller than it sounds. One sentence instead of a question. One moment of naming instead of collecting. Done at the right moment, in the right weight, it changes the entire texture of what she experiences when she's with you. She won't know why. She'll just know something felt different. Something felt true. Something felt for the first time in a long time like the real thing. There's something more uncomfortable in this technique than pace and reflection, and most men won't do it. Not because they don't understand it, because it requires them to stop protecting themselves. Here's what that actually means when it shows up in real life. A man sits across from a woman and feels the subtle pressure to be solid, not physically, psychologically. To have answers, to be composed, to be the version of himself that doesn't hesitate, doesn't contradict itself, doesn't reveal any loose edges, because somewhere along the way he learned that attraction is conditional on control, so he tightens. Every response gets filtered, every story gets adjusted, every admission gets checked before it leaves his mouth. Not consciously, not as a calculated move, but as a reflex, a defense mechanism so deeply ingrained it feels like personality. He becomes smooth, and smooth feels right until you look at what it actually produces. Distance. Because the moment everything you say is polished, everything you say becomes predictable, safe in the wrong way, contained. There are no gaps, no friction, nothing for another person to step into. And without that, there's nothing to trust. The instinct to present strength is powerful. The ego protects it aggressively. It tells you that if you show uncertainty, if you admit something isn't fully resolved, if you expose a part of your thinking that isn't clean and finished, you lose ground. You lose attraction. You lose position. But what it never tells you is what you lose by staying polished. You lose reality. And people don't trust perfection. They scan for it, actually. The nervous system is constantly asking a quiet question beneath the conversation. Is this person real, or are they managing me? When everything lands too clean, too controlled, too aligned with what should be said, the answer comes back quickly. This is a performance, and no one relaxes into a performance. The third shift is selective exposure, and it's where most men hesitate because it feels like stepping off stable ground. Selective exposure doesn't mean opening everything. It doesn't mean unloading your past or turning the interaction into a confession. That's not what builds trust. That creates pressure. This is precision. It happens in moments, specific ones, where something real is available, and instead of replacing it with something polished, you let it stay. Someone asks you a question that doesn't have a clean answer. You feel the instinct to smooth it out. That's the moment. And instead of reaching for the version that sounds right, you say what's actually there, even if it's slightly unfinished. I don't have a clean answer to that. I've been sitting with it. Or, that's something I got wrong and haven't fully worked out yet. Or even, I'm more uncertain about that than I'd like to be. Not dramatic, not heavy, just real. And what happens next is subtle, but consistent. The body across from you shifts, not visibly, not in a way you can point to immediately, but something relaxes. Because uncertainty expressed without anxiety doesn't read as weakness, it reads as honesty, and honesty, when it isn't forced, lowers threat. This isn't theory. It's pattern recognition at a biological level. When someone risks saying something unguarded, something that doesn't serve a clear advantage, the nervous system registers the absence of manipulation. There's no agenda in that moment. And when the sense of agenda drops, trust has space to enter. Most men never feel this because they never allow that space to open. They stay in control of the image. They answer questions the way they think they're supposed to. They present a version of themselves that holds together perfectly under inspection. No contradictions, no unfinished thoughts, no visible edges. And it works. At a surface level, they're respected, they're liked. But something never crosses over, because you cannot trust someone you can't see through, and a man with no gaps in his presentation leaves no openings for connection to exist inside of. Think about your own patterns. Someone asks you something slightly personal, not invasive, just enough to move the conversation out of the safe zone. And you feel it, that quick internal check. You reach for the answer that sounds stable, that reinforces who you are, that keeps everything aligned. You say that instead of what's actually true, and nothing goes wrong, but nothing deepens either. The conversation stays warm and goes nowhere real. Selective exposure interrupts that pattern. It introduces something unedited into a space that's used to being managed. It signals, without saying it directly, that what's happening right now isn't controlled, that you're not positioning, that you're not performing, you're just there. And that signal, quiet, almost invisible, changes the entire interaction. Because beneath everything else, trust is built on one fundamental recognition. This person exists beyond what they're showing me. Not as a concept, as a felt experience. The moment someone senses that what you're saying hasn't been filtered for impact, something in them leans closer, not physically, internally. They start to meet you differently, not as someone to evaluate, but as someone to experience. I used to move through every meaningful conversation with a polished version of myself, ready to go. I had answers that landed well, stories that made sense, responses that kept everything clean and controlled. I thought that was strength. What it actually created was distance, because there's nothing to connect to in something that never reveals its edges. No tension, no uncertainty, no humanity in motion, just structure. And structure doesn't invite trust. People don't need you to be perfect. They need to feel that what they're seeing isn't all there is, that there's more behind it, that if they stepped closer, they wouldn't hit a wall of presentation. They'd find a person. You've probably felt the difference before, even if you didn't have the language for it. The moment someone says something slightly unguarded, not oversharing, not dramatic, just real, and the entire interaction shifts. You pay more attention. You lean in, not because what they said was impressive, but because it wasn't. It didn't try to be, and that's what made it land. Selective exposure isn't weakness. It's the removal of unnecessary control. It's the decision, in specific moments, to stop protecting the image long enough for something real to come through. And that's where trust begins. Not in perfection, not in certainty, but in the quiet, controlled risk of being seen without the edit. Andrew Marshall understood this too late to pretend it didn't matter. Before, he had an answer for everything. Every story about his past was refined to land cleanly. Every mistake was framed as a lesson already learned. Every uncertainty was either hidden or resolved before it was spoken. He looked like a man who had it together, and that's exactly why no one ever fully trusted him. After, the shift wasn't dramatic. He didn't become more emotional. He didn't start revealing everything. He didn't abandon control. He just stopped editing certain moments. Mid-sentence sometimes, he would feel the polished version forming and let it go. He'd say the less complete version instead, the one that wasn't as impressive, but was more accurate. And something changed, not loudly, but consistently. Women couldn't explain it, but they felt it. Conversations with him had texture now. There were edges, small openings where something real could live. He felt different, not better on paper, just more present, more there. And that's the part most men miss. You don't trust someone because of how well they present. You trust them because, at some point, they stopped presenting long enough for you to actually see them. And once that happens, everything else has somewhere to land. Here's the part that separates this from every surface-level version you've seen before. Most people talk about mirroring like it's something you do. A technique, a tactic, a set of behaviors you apply from the outside to influence what happens on the inside of another person. Match her tone, reflect her words, align your body language. It sounds right. It just doesn't work the way they think it does, because the moment mirroring becomes something you apply, it becomes visible, not consciously. She won't sit there and think, he's mirroring me right now. But her nervous system will register it instantly. There's a difference between something that emerges and something that's placed, and people can feel that difference without knowing why. Real mirroring doesn't come from strategy. It comes from attention, the kind of attention most people don't give because they're too busy managing themselves in the interaction, thinking about what to say next, how they're coming across, whether they're doing well, whether this is going somewhere. All of that pulls you out of the moment, and when you're out of the moment, everything you do becomes slightly off. A half-second delay. A response that's technically correct but emotionally disconnected. A question that sounds interested but isn't anchored in anything real. That's why surface-level mirroring feels hollow. It's imitation without presence. The version that actually builds trust. The one that makes someone walk away and say, I don't know what it is about him. I just feel like I've known him for years. Doesn't come from copying behavior. It comes from genuine curiosity, not performed curiosity, not strategic interest, not asking questions because you've been told it creates connection. Actual curiosity, the kind where you're more interested in understanding this specific person than you are in being understood well by them. That's the shift most men never make, because it requires letting go of control. If you're trying to get somewhere, a number, a date, validation, even connection as an outcome, your attention splits. Part of you is with her, but part of you is tracking progress, measuring responses, adjusting behavior. You're not fully there, and anything that comes from that state carries an agenda, even if it's subtle, especially if it's subtle. Andrew Marshall learned this in a way that changed everything that came after. He stopped entering conversations with an objective, not as a trick, not as reverse psychology. He didn't replace wanting something with pretending not to want something. He actually let go of the need for the interaction to produce anything at all. No number, no date, no validation, not even connection as a goal. He just paid attention to what was actually happening in front of him, to the person across from him. Not the version she was presenting, but the small inconsistencies underneath it. The shifts in tone. The places where her words didn't quite match her energy. The moments where something real almost came through and then got pulled back. And because he wasn't trying to move the interaction somewhere, he stopped performing. There was nothing to perform for. And when that dropped, something else dropped with it. She stopped performing too. That's the part most people miss. Mirroring isn't one-directional. It's not you reflecting her. It's the environment allowing both of you to settle into something unguarded. When one person removes the armor, the other person feels it, not as a conscious decision, but as a shift in safety. The nervous system picks up on the absence of pressure, the absence of manipulation, the absence of someone trying to take something, and without being asked, it begins to lower its own defenses. Slowly, quietly, but consistently. That's the full mirror. Not behavior matching behavior, state matching state, presence meeting presence. And it only happens when there's nothing underneath the interaction that needs to be achieved. Most men are trying to earn trust. They think it comes from saying the right things, doing the right things, showing enough value, enough confidence, enough control that the other person decides they're safe. But trust doesn't work like that. Trust isn't given because you proved yourself. It's given when there's no sense that you're trying to prove anything at all. The fastest way to make someone trust you is to stop needing them to, not as a tactic. That's where people get it wrong. You can't pretend to not need it. The moment it becomes a strategy, it collapses back into performance. And performance is exactly what the nervous system is built to detect. This only works when it's real. When you're actually present, when your curiosity is genuine, when you're paced with her instead of ahead of her, when you reflect instead of extract, when you allow moments of selective exposure instead of maintaining a constant polished surface, and underneath all of it, when you're unattached to what happens next. That combination creates something rare. A man who isn't trying to win. A man who isn't subtly pulling the interaction toward an outcome. A man who is just there, fully. And that presence does something most techniques can't replicate. It removes pressure from the room. And once pressure is gone, people become different. More open, more honest, more themselves. Not because you asked them to be, because the space finally allows it. There's a kind of safety that doesn't come from reassurance. It comes from absence. The absence of agenda. The absence of need. The absence of someone trying to turn the moment into something else. And when that's what someone feels from you, trust doesn't build slowly. It appears, not fully formed, but fast enough to change the entire tone of the interaction. Here's the part most people won't accept. The mirror technique doesn't work if you're trying to use it. The moment you pick it up as a tool, something to deploy, something to execute, something to get a result, it becomes exactly what it's supposed to replace: a performance. And once it's a performance, it loses the one thing that made it effective: reality. The pace, the reflection, the selective exposure, the presence. None of these are tricks. They're expressions. They show up naturally when the foundation is right, and if the foundation isn't there, forcing the behaviors won't fix it. It'll just make the interaction feel slightly off in a way no one can explain, which means the real work isn't learning how to mirror. It's becoming someone who naturally does, someone present enough to actually notice what's happening, secure enough to not rush or force direction, honest enough to let unpolished truth exist in conversation, curious enough that attention moves outward instead of looping back to self. That's where this comes from. Andrew didn't become more trusted because he learned a better technique. He became more trusted because he stopped needing to appear like anything at all. He removed the layer that was always managing perception, and what was left was simple, direct, real, and immediately different. The women in his life felt it without needing to understand it. Conversations with him stopped feeling like interactions and started feeling like experiences, not because he changed what he did, because he changed what he was there for. That's the technique. And once you see it clearly, you realize it was never really a technique at all. If this landed, you already know what to do next. Subscribe. Not because I'm asking you to, because where this goes next is the part most people avoid. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it.